All right, welcome back to part two of our discussion of your method and analysis paper. Uh, Jumping back in, remember we're talking about how to write the analysis section. So how to begin to answer your research question with evidence from your text. All right, you do that with the help of theory. So if I am writing a thesis about how Clinton soothes the nation with a speech after the Oklahoma City bombing on TV, he uses pathos appeals and a narrative for how to live after tragedy. So I have kind of two arguments going there, the pathos appeals argument and the narrative how to live after tragedy argument. All right? As I said before, you're only required to tell me about the first argument and explain it to me for this paper. It's only your first argument. So I would show through a neo-Aristotelian analysis how Clinton soothed the nation through pathos appeals. All right, Aristotle looked at how emotion influences people. So I would submit all the evidence in the speech that I see for how Clinton persuaded through emotion or tried to move people through emotion. And then I would give an explanation for why I think all that is true. So that's what I'm asking you to do. And you can table the rest of your argument for the next paper. But if you have an idea of another direction you want to go, share that with me. All right. So maybe you don't know how you're going to use narrative theory yet, but I want you to explain the theory to me and maybe highlight a couple directions that you want to go in. All right. So as I said, everything in the yellow box is just a preview. You don't have to do your second main argument yet. All right. So let's look at a case study to help you. Sometimes it can be hard to think about how on earth am I going to make an argument about a media text. All right, so I'm going to give you another example that might be a little bit easier to understand. So let's say that I want to study for my thesis the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. If you don't know this, there was a Queer Eye for the Straight Guy show from 2003 to 2007, which the new Queer Eye is based upon that you see on Netflix. So let's watch just a couple seconds of the clip so you can see what it's about. So five guys again, the Fab Five.
Wow, you're tanner than I am, and I'm tanorexic.
That's right. It's just the beginning.
We could have a steel cage tanning mask. Look good
All right, so let me give you some context for what's going on if you've never seen this version of the show. So the five gay guys, the Fab Five, are going to help clueless straight men with all these aspects of their lives to help them romantically, to help them fall in love and find their happiness. All right. So unlike the Queer Eye of today, these were gay men helping strictly heterosexual couples. And so I want to analyze this as my media text. I'm going to take on an episode of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and tell you what's going on in this text and why it's important. So one more thing I want to say is after the Fab Five makes over the straight guy, they head back to the loft, which is their hangout space, to watch the love unfold, the big event where the guy proposes or he goes on his first date or whatever. So they're kind of relegated back into their own space, back into the closet, as at least one scholar has argued. All right, so I would be very interested in analyzing this as my case. So let's say that my overarching thesis for this project is the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy promotes a heterosexual and romance-centered ideology that places gays on the periphery. Okay, if that's my claim, I'm going to have to do some work to explain my method that uses ideological criticism. All right, an ideology is a set of rules or expectations that animate a culture, that reflect upon a culture. So ideological criticism is a technique of analysis that seeks to uncover how ideology is buried in an artifact, or how we can find ideology through media. How does media influence us as a culture? I know from scholarship that ideologies are formed through social interaction, watching pop culture texts like Queer Eye, through school, through family rituals, etc. So if this were my paper, I would explain that methodology, citing appropriate sources, and citing other scholars, so McGee, McCarrow, Wander, Condit. Okay, you might not have this many articles that explain your theory, but for your method section, explain those who you do uncover and what they're saying about how to use ideological criticism or ideological theory. Okay? So, other theories that I might use would be hegemony. That's something that we've seen before in some of your studies. Hegemonic power, how power works in a society through media, media effects. These are all options that are available to you. It's just about what theory will help you. Okay, so then how do I go about analyzing this thing? I have my ideological criticism as a guiding method or methodology. I'm going to argue for the first part of my paper to answer my overarching claim or research question. Main argument 1, heterosexual men are featured prominently as deserving as love, whereas the Fab Five, or gays, play a supporting role in dating. They're not the daters themselves. They are separate from heterosexual romance, which ultimately reinforces an ideology that favors heterosexual love and pushes homosexual love back into the closet. All right? I made a lot of claims there. I made a lot of claims in that argument. So now let me explain each of those in turn in my analysis. So you might be wondering, how on earth am I going to fill up 3, 4, 5, 6 pages with an analysis? Well, you have to explain your major arguments about what you're observing in your text. All right? So my first sub-argument might be describing how heterosexual relationships are the only relationships featured in the episode, at least romantic relationships. Gay men are qualified to advise straight men, but their dating is not a feature or even mentioned on the show. All right? Secondly, gay love is sort of relegated to a designated space afterward, or their friendships move to a designated space to watch or observe heterosexual love going on over there. So you can make arguments about how that reinforces an ideology that favors heterosexual romance. All right, and on and on and on. And I would give scenes, I would give dialogue, I would give interpretations of those things to back up my arguments. All right. Now remember, if this is my overarching thesis paper, I'm going to have to think of a second major argument to back up my idea that heterosexual romance is favored, and that's the ideology that's being put forth. So maybe I'll have a whole nother section about how lesbians, as part of the gay community, are completely non-existent in Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. All right, especially not in this episode. It's really just the world of men. And I could bring in gender theory. I could bring in feminist theory to say how, women and lesbians are non-existent. And that's another way that heterosexual male love is highlighted ideologically through this text. Okay? Hopefully you're with me with this example. If not, or you're struggling to think of your own argument, go back to your actual text and collect your data, get your method section going. How am I actually going to analyze this? And then read through your stuff. What themes bubble to the top? What are you observing? Is the evidence in the text reinforcing what you read in the theory? If so, that might be your argument. If it's going against what you read in the theory, if you're seeing something new happening, that might be what you bring forth. All right, we're almost done here. I just want to mention about your conclusion for this method and analysis paper. Just 1 to 3 paragraphs summing everything up. Think through some implications of your findings. What's the so what? You don't have to have these all narrowed down yet, but I want you to just say, why is what I have uncovered important? All right, why does it matter? What might left to be said about your text or your artifact? What else did you not have time to research, but would you suggest is another way forward? All right. So while I was unable to analyze the entire body of the original Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, all episodes of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, I would do that in further research, and I would also look at the new version of Queer Eye on Netflix to see if that pushes against this ideology. All right. So maybe with my Queer Eye example here, a nice concluding section might include the words, "This program forwards an ideology in which gays only have temporary access to mainstream culture before they're relegated to their own space. Lesbians are completely absent. I hope that my research helps us to be more attuned to the ways in which media promotes perceptions of marginalized groups." Okay. So say something about why this all matters, essentially, as you wrap up with your conclusion. So some other things to keep in mind as you're writing this paper, and I promise this is the very last slide. Remember, assume that I'm completely unfamiliar with your text and your theories that you're presenting. So give me more background information. Reveal the interesting features of your case studies and explain them to me where you think it's appropriate. So right before you conduct analysis of that particular case study might be a good place, or describe in a couple of paragraphs each case study up front in your method section or at the beginning of your analysis. That placement is going to be up to you. As you're conducting your analysis, make sure that you are checking back in with the theory that you're using to analyze your items, your case studies. Am I always paying attention to the research question? Is everything I'm presenting here supporting my thesis statement about my major findings? As far as organization, make sure you use topic sentences, previews, and summaries to help me follow along in your paper. And support all of your claims with evidence from your case studies, quotes that people have said on Instagram, explanations of where you're going or where you got your information. All of that is going to be important. That we call that textual evidence. So describe what you're looking at so that I can understand it, or quote somebody and then interpret that for me. All right. I think that's everything. I haven't given you complete examples of your method section and analysis, but this is a great starting off point. I also encourage you to take a look back at the Twitter analysis thesis section that I posted earlier in the semester. I'll put that back on Canvas right now so that you can read through that again and see the different sections of that paper to help you write your own. I'm signing off for now. Let me know what questions you have in the discussion, and good luck these next couple of weeks. I look forward to seeing you again the Friday after spring break. Bye, y'all. Oh, take a look at this last slide about a quick review of everything we just covered. That should help you out. Okay, bye. Have a nice spring break.